Hello everybody, Raspberry Barrel here, and before we start, I just want to say thank you all for your kind words and support about me being a little late on the last video and about the whole hurricane situation. The biography of Space Butterfly by Selena Verse on Toy House. This is another biography that you won't be seeing the image of the biography the whole time. You'll be seeing images of the princess and queen. Please forgive me if I stutter, hesitate, or mispronounce anything, and let's get right into this. So, Space Butterfly is the daughter of Yvain Butterfly, a queen that we have read before. Space, the queen of queens, the true heir to the butterfly throne, to prove her rights and protect it against all falsehood, creating the book of magic and spells, she started a legacy known till now. Space Butterfly, born 1 ABC, died 52 ABC, reigned 23 ABC to 41 ABC. She was married to Romano O'Corneal through 19 ABC to 23 ABC, and then married Oak Groves, 24 ABC through 52 ABC. Children: Mercurina Butterfly, Lokina Butterfly, and Uranus Butterfly. Born on a chilly autumn day in the year of 1 ABC, born with her father's piercing eyes, and her hair that was a lighter shade of her father's own color, though in the queen's account she would comment how similar the shade was to her late older sister, Jasmine Butterfly. To many shock when she was born with marks that they were a darker blue than her mother's, that they looked in that time looked similar to the jar used for the smelling perfumes that were made from that flower known as Acinus lilies, hence her being given a name that was a shortening of the flower's own, Space Butterfly. In her youth, she often was never alone, as not a year later she was introduced to her little sister, a girl that, as she learned from her mother, looked similar to her late aunt, only with greenish blue diamonds on her cheeks, she being named Jasmine Butterfly. And in 3 ABC, she would have a brother that was almost a copy of her sister, but was born without marks, named Tritus Butterfly. Her final sibling came when she was 3, and would be another boy that was a true mix of his parents, more than any of the siblings that came before, and was named Nereidus Butterfly. As the heiress of Muni, her education was not limited, and often had different tutors for her scholarly etiquette lessons, and though she was still at a young age, she often was given a much stricter eye when it came to how she acted in both public acts and in private dinners with other lords' families. One example that is exemplified is when the princess was 5 and her mother and father went on a long voyage to see the final constructions of the Claw forts in the far north, and due to the climate, her parents left her and her young siblings in the hands of their governesses to continue their lessons. And when her parents' carriage was announced to have entered the gates, young Space, dressed in what at the time was her nightdress, ran barefooted across the palace just as her parents' carriage doors opened, much to the shock of much of the staff. Historical note: by the context clues in many old writings in her life, it seemed that much of the castle staff had no change when Queen Yvain took order. And although Yvain was happy and openly hugged her daughter, her father gave her a smile that she and her siblings dubbed later in their life as the disappointment smile. And when she was in the castle, her father softly scolded Space for doing that, and though her mother gave her softer remarks, it was still with agreement with her husband that as their eldest daughter and heiress to the throne, she was to be a role model for all of Muni's future, and running around in the nightgown was very unbecoming. From that day on, she often tried to act more refrained, but she still had her slips back into immaturity that at the time many let slide for her age range, and they did damper themselves out as the years went on. When she was 9 years old in the year 10 ABC, while her family was resting at a small village, she and her siblings went to a field to play when her mother seemed to disappear. It wasn't until screaming and guards rushed to grab her and her siblings, and finally when her mind stopped racing, she saw her mother in a bed, unconscious, with healers over her trying to help her. Space distraught when she found her mother like this, often stayed by her mother unconscious side, to the point that she once fell asleep in her bed beside her mother. When her mother awoke, she hugged her mother tightly. When she was able to let go of her mother, she was introduced to her aunt, Lady Katrina Butterfly, and that she would return to the palace that same day. When the royal family returned to the palace, the Yvain started to take her to council meetings with her. At these meetings, many saw the change in the young princess's educated side come out more. And, due to this, many lords and ladies started to bring their own children to court and often would try to persuade their children to gain the favor of the princess. Two examples of this are her cousin, the heiress of House Marine, Lady Serene Marine. The two were as close as they could be, and often Serene acted like Space's lady-in-waiting. Another example was the young son of the head of the house, Corneal, Lord Rome Corneal, and the little brother of the heiress, Mylin O'Corneal. Space made special mention in her personal journal as a boy that was quick when embarrassed and often fights with Mylin. A special note must be made in light of a letter that was archived by House Grimm that was discovered that discussed the princess and how the lords changed their thoughts on the princess. It is to make light of her highness' presence in court. Once she was a wild child that, though tried to have a proper presence, was not the case, and would act out. Now, though, that she acts little, and often will ask cordially to the lords. I once was able to ask the princess why she questioned, and her response was one of kindness, wanting to be a great ruler, and thus she often wondered about the other lands. When the princess reached her 10th year of life, she began small courtships with many young lords. However, these relationships didn't last long, as both the accounts of Sir Glosric and the princess's journal that the longest was only 3 weeks long. When the princess reached her 14th birthday in 15 ABC, she was shocked by the two events on that day. The first was early in the morning, whereas she was preparing for a traditional event. As she wrote, "A servant came into my room with a glistening small wooden chest that rested in her hands perfectly. When she sat it on my vanity, I opened it to reveal a golden crown with 5 points. At the top of the points, the jewels were similar to the color of my cheek emblems. I do not know who it is from, but I am eternally grateful. Now I have a crown of my own that is like my mother's." One note must be made on the princess's attire on this day. As in old sketches from out the time, the royal tailors said that the dress was longer and reached her ankles. However, in many accounts, that she was wearing a very short dress. By the accounts given by Sir Glosric, that when she was walking down the hall, she began to trip and fall multiple times. Becoming frustrated, she went to her room and took a pair of scissors and cut the dress and hemmed it, to the point that it wasn't going to trip her as she walked. When she arrived in the throne room and walked down the throne room's long hall to her parents' throne to bow to them and wish a happy birthday to her, her mother stopped her and presented her the wand for her to take, and when she took it in her hands, it changed into a new, much to her shock, this becoming the first recorded wand ceremony. Historical note: From the readings of the older drafts from the Royal Library, this seems to be a true account, though this coming from the accounts of the lords and ladies of the court and Sir Glosric than your many great-grandmothers, Space's journal. To Romano, any chance she got. On the account of her spells, much like many things, she was very studious, writing every lesson in magic her mother and even Sir Glosric gave her. Many of the notes are lost, thanks to the great munifier that can be found in the Royal Book of Spells. Historical note: there are even copies of many of the general notes the ancestors of the what she called in her journal as our time. Her mother catching them, she feared she would try to separate them, and she would have to end it with Romano. However, if this was not the case, as her mother merely smiled warmly at them and offered one comment, quoted from her journal, "I suggest looking for a more quiet place if you wish to show passion to one another, for the castle has ears and eyes, and my dear's aim is still as sharp as ever." With that, her mother left them. Space took her mother's advice to heart, and her and Romana would often walk across the palace, and when they either or both found a hidden location, they would tell the other. One of these the princess wrote in her journal as, "A door that we found that was once hidden behind a bookcase in a room I won't disclose. The stairway was dark. I had to use my wand to make a glow for us to see. When we reached the end, it was a room that had a small window, and I noticed one had glass in it, the metal framing still in the shape of a butterfly's wings." In the princess's journal, they too would call that place the Secret Tower, and the two often would spend time in the tower, as much if not more than when they once spent in the garden. They thought their secret would be kept forever until during in the early winter season of 19 BC, the two, after a long party in celebration of the final harvest, gathered, and she and her love were seen dancing the night away, and the two even drinking drinks of similar color to the adults who were at the party. The two would disappear from the party at its height, going to their secret tower, and the princess stating in her journal, "Feasting on the delights of the night, and secrets that I shall never speak on here." However, the secret would come out more and more as the winter soon took hold, and the princess soon started to become sick every morning, and certain foods she had to avoid in order